Are you one of those people with a giving spirit? Do you naturally extend yourself to ensure that you brighten the days of other people? Without a shadow of a doubt of hesitation, I would certainly put Robert LaBrecque in that category. He's a man of high energy, spirit, and has a giving soul. After spending more than 35 years in the rehabilitation field, LaBrecque was eager to share all of the knowledge he had accumulated over the last 3.5 decades. Therefore, in 2019, he launched Align Case Management, who offers task assignment case management services to the personal injury field in Canada. His professional journey is only part of his story, as LaBrecque has also spent the last 40 years as a foster parent, giving hope, inspiration, and a reason to smile to countless kids. He joined me this week to have a wide-ranging conversation about personal injury, case management, his life experiences, the impact that it's had on children, and so much more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Formally welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you today about Align Case Management and all about your personal and professional experience. Great to see you again, and thank you so very much for being here.
Well, Kevin, my pleasure completely. It's great to see you again, and great to have a chance to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Bob, I know that you've spent nearly or over 35 years in the rehabilitation field and helping people with injuries, and you've also started Align Case Management as a sort of a passion project in 2019, which helps people with task and case management. So I'm wondering if you could begin our conversation by sort of giving me sort of a 360-degree view of what makes you so fabulous, buddy.
Sure. Well, so sadly, I have to correct you. It's been 40 years that I've been at this, and way back in the day, Kevin, as a staff case manager for a variety of private rehabilitation companies, when I started, literally, private rehabilitation didn't exist. We were a brand new entity in the marketplace, and it was 100% at that point funded and directed by the insurance companies. And the design was to provide case management coordination, discharge planning from the hospital, service coordination, and really managing the individual's disability experience until they return to optimum medical recovery, and we hoped employment and resuming most of their activities of daily living. So fast forward 40 years, during that time, FSCO, which is the Financial Service Commission of Ontario, are regularly reviewing the insurance product, medical rehabilitation benefits, and so on, that an individual gets when they're hurt. And it's been an up and down experience where at some points in my career, the insurance companies funded, broadly an individual's rehabilitation needs, physiotherapy, equipment, vocational rehab. They funded it broadly, And then the pendulum has swung to the other side, where it's getting a little bit more challenging to get adequate levels of rehabilitation services to kind of completely and optimally recover from an accident. So right now is a little bit of a challenging time for injured people, because the amount of benefits have been contracted a little bit, and the access to those benefits are a little bit more challenging. And correctly, you know, you have to be able to prove that you need a medical rehabilitation services when you're hurt in a car accident. You do have to be able to show that you need those services. It's a bit tougher now to meet the plumb line to qualify for some of these benefits. So it's been a challenging course for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. And I know that it's also important to you to have a constant network of people where you reach out and network and try and build bridges of understanding and camaraderie when it comes to this line of work. So tell me about why it's so important for you to share your passion for this line of work specifically.
Well, it's an interesting observation, and you're right. The rehabilitation community is big, but it's small. Most privately owned rehabilitation companies know each other, and we regularly use each other. And in fact, just about 5 months ago, because I'm old and I've been around a while and I do have a network, we formed a group called the Align Cooperative. And that cooperative is made up of 15 companies, all involved in one form or another with rehabilitating people who have been hurt in an accident. Some of our members are involved in assessing injuries and making recommendations, or they're engineers and they're involved in recreating and reconstructing an accident to determine who is at fault. Some are accountants that help quantify an individual's loss and what their injury is costing them, not just from a injury perspective, but from a future earning perspective. Some members are involved in medical cannabis treatment and are involved in providing medical cannabis to help people with chronic pain or PTSD post-accident, and everything in between. And there's occupational therapists and physiotherapists and physicians. And so it's a pretty broad group. And really that group is made up of just what you said, a network of like-minded people that I've come to know over the years. And we've launched this group called the Align Cooperative, and it's been very well received. So it's important because, and you've raised a really good question about passion. And it's important to note that what we're talking about here is commercial rehabilitation. It is for profit. It is not publicly funded. It is paid for by the insurance companies and or by the law firms that represent injured individuals. So the people that are doing this are doing so, because we love it and we find great satisfaction in assisting people, but also we're constantly needing to meet customers' expectations. We are there to be fired if we're not adequately supporting an injured individual, or if their lawyer feels that we're not actively and effectively executing our rehabilitation responsibilities. So, and I'm not suggesting that publicly funded entities behave differently. I'm just saying that we're always at risk because we're hired for a specific job. We have to be very cognizant that we're spending very precious insurance dollars to better that person's situation. So we're constantly self-evaluating. We're constantly being evaluated by our clients, which is important. And we're very passionate about making sure that the individual is our customer and our client, regardless of who's paying for it or who's assigned us to the task. Ultimately, we're working for that injured individual, and we are being paid by their very precious insurance dollars. So waste not, want not. And, if you can get something done in the most effective, impactful way, there's no excuse not to. And that's sort of our mandate, is to make sure we do the best job we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bob, let's speak here last answer. You sparked my interest to ask you about the new mega hospital that everyone's excited. Depending on what side of the aisle you're on, you're really excited or you're really not. So I'll frame the question this way. In terms of the mega hospital, what are you most looking for when it comes to rehabilitation and the impact on the community once the hospital is built?
Well, I think that's a great question. And like all of us, I think that are, funding this, or the public dollars that are funding it, the hope is that it creates some organic and natural efficiencies. I'm from the East Coast of the country and grew up there and have worked there over the years, and I continue to work there through our legal clients. And what I do notice is that geography does impact the delivery of healthcare. So, if you, and I'm, a recent client of needing to go to London to receive a particular medical service. And so my global hope is that Windsor-Essex County will have, at the end of the day, a world-class facility where once you go through that front door, the vast majority of whatever healthcare you're seeking is going to be under that roof. And that efficiency and that access, is essential. I think whether, and I'm a student of Canadian healthcare and American healthcare. I have a daughter and son-in-law and granddaughter that live in Michigan, and I've had the opportunity and really the privilege of working as a rehabilitation case manager in America in certain states. And I've had, more than a glancing view at the differences in the system. And I think where we sometimes are lacking on the Canadian side is access, is entry points and efficient entry points to specialist treatment, testing, and so on. So I'm hopeful, optimistic that this mega hospital, whenever you attach the word mega to anything, it sounds obviously it's big. It's got to be big and hopefully inclusive, hopefully comprehensive, and again, hopefully bridging some of those access gaps that we might have right now in the region.
Yeah, and Bob, I know that you've been around this for a very long time, and when we talk about rehabilitation in this region, most families start at the John McGivney Children's Center until they are sort of given to another entity. And one of the big things that I work on with the center is the transition to adulthood program. The center has recently introduced more programming and more resources for families as they transition out of the center and into the adult life. Because as you know, once you turn 18 and at 21, most of the medical services that people have become accustomed to, you now have to pay for out of pocket. So tell me your thoughts on the importance of transition to adulthood services when it comes to things like rehabilitation. I'm curious.
Yeah. So, a huge part of our family's life, my wife Cindy and myself, has been foster parenting. And we've had, the great privilege of providing foster placements and foster care in 3 provinces, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Ontario. And so we've learned a lot in those 40 years. We've done that for 40 years. We continue to do it. And what we've noticed is in the key element, whether it's a biological family that's transitioning a young person from youth services to adult services, or whether it's a young person who finds themselves in foster care and transitioning from youth services to adult services, is planning. And, I think, like most of us, I think, we leave planning, whether it's for, tax planning or estate planning or vacation planning or whatever, we leave it a little too late. And I think, most families, I think, benefit from a proactive approach to identifying, wow, our young person's turning 14, TikTok, in 4 years or in 7 years, we're going to have to not get services from this pod. What's available? And what we've happily discovered is there is a great network in Windsor-Essex County through various service providers that already have those bridges built. It's simply a matter of reaching out, doing that research, identifying what services are needed, who's providing them, and getting on what might be a waiting list, but shortening that waiting list if you've planned a little bit. I mean, sometimes there just aren't all the spots we'd want, but planning can shorten maybe the gap of maybe getting passport dollars, or maybe getting, the equipment assessment that you need done to improve your mobility situation, or whatever it is. Planning is the key. So as difficult as it is to, kind of think about, well, we have to leave the McGivney Center, or we have to leave another program or school. What are our options? What do we need to do to prepare for that? Those are key activities that can really enhance the experience.
Yeah, and just building on that point, Bob, when you look at the financial aspect of taking on this new or continued services, what would be your message to anyone watching this about the importance of financial planning when it comes to things like this?
Oh my God. Well, it's maybe it's not underused or overused, but if we're talking about a person, with a specific need, whether it's, a mobility deficit, or a cognitive deficit, or a psychological deficit, oddly enough, there's great help to be found from a financial planner that's familiar with disability tax credits and setting up of Henson trusts. There are strategies that can literally start when a person is 1 year old or 2 years old, where you can begin the building blocks of the very difficult task of financial safety nets and financial resources that person's going to need when they're 28, 30, 40, and 50. And these are difficult conversations sometimes about who's going to be responsible for what as life goes on. But difficult conversations, again, better to have early than late. And there's lots of experts in the field that, you simply research Henson trusts, and you'll be surprised how many people are available locally, provincially, and nationally that can really take a family under their wing and help with that level of planning and financial foundations that you have to put in place to make sure there's limited gaps in the resources that are going to be required. That being said, there's also an incredible number of scholarships and grants. There's a number of private companies that specialize in doing just that, writing grant applications for specific needs or group needs, and those services are invaluable in terms of identifying all available financial resources.
It's important to be invested in the process, isn't it?
Oh my God, for sure. And yes, pure and simple. There's no need for a long, expansive answer for that. If the family's all in, and they have a support network around them, all focused on the same goal, which is to, equip their young person with all of the resources that are available to maximize, their interface with the community and maximize their level of function, then, these situations tend to end positively. I think the folks that struggle, I think if they look back, there may have been opportunities to start that planning process a little earlier. But at the end of the day, families particularly now, are facing, uncertain futures. COVID has really dampened fundraising for a lot of local groups that assist our community. So yeah, you know what? It's uncertain times, but it doesn't lessen the importance of doing everything you can as a group to make it rain, as they say, and find all the resources you need.
Yeah, Bob, one of our mutual passions is, inclusive employment. Bob, I always say if you give someone with a disability a job, you also give them a sense of belonging in addition to the financial security. And I know that you've spent some time as an employment counselor, and I know that we both share the passion to make sure that individuals with disabilities are gainfully employed. So talk to me about the importance of a diversified workforce and the benefits that can provide.
Sure. Well, I'll share this story, Kevin, because I think it intersects well with that point. Way back in the day, I think I was 22 or 23 years old, and my family and I had moved to a little town in northern Ontario called Espanola. And there was an adult rehabilitation center there at ARC Industries. And ARC Industries really don't exist anymore, but it was sheltered employment for individuals with a cognitive impairment or a physical impairment or a combination of those issues. And it was really sheltered employment. And when I was hired as their director at 22, I had no business being in that job. But at that point, that enterprise owned and operated a flower shop, and we had built wooden pallets for the local pulp and paper company, and we were involved in some basic furniture fabrication and retailing that. And we were receiving large subsidies from, at that time, the Department of Community and Social Services. Well, wanting to freshen the pot a little bit in terms of not only the work that we did, but how our community perceived us, we aggressively pursued a contract with Bell and Howell to microfilm, which is an old term, but to microfilm medical records from the 3 regional hospitals in Northern Ontario. Now everything's digital and electronic and scanned and saved on, a bottle cap. But back then, medical records were microfilmed. They were photographed and stored on smaller but yet still cumbersome microfilm. So long story short, Bell and Howell provided the very high-tech equipment at the time to photograph and store these microfilms, and the hospitals were paying us market value for it. So instead of showing up for work at a sheltered workplace, our staff members, our clients, if you will, but our employees showed up in shirts and ties and pantsuits and skirts and blazers, and they did office work, and they did high-tech, highly valued office work. And oddly enough, the community, they observed this, they saw this, and we were collectively, ARC Industries was viewed much more as a business and a place of employment rather than sheltered employment and a place for folks to go to pass the day. So it struck me as a young person that optics are everything and environment is everything. And simply by changing the perception of what was happening within the building, the people in there were viewed differently, their abilities were viewed differently, their limitations were viewed differently. And it was a very powerful lesson for a young person, myself, to learn very early that you only have to change some elements of a person's circumstance to completely change their self-view and the view of the people in their lives. It was remarkable to me how many parents saw their young person differently when they were earning minimum wage or a little better and operating a $250,000 piece of machinery instead of a pallet gun or some of the more basic stuff. everybody's view of what was happening changed, and in very important ways. So to translate that to Stellantis or a liquor store or Walmart or a restaurant, if somebody requiring some accommodation shows up, depending on at what level the buy-in is, with the ownership of the company and the co-workers and the clients of that business, I think it only improves everybody's quality of life to have an inclusive, adaptive workplace. I think if you're a healthy community, that's intuitive, and I think one employer at a time, one coworker at a time, one employee at a time. I think that change is, I'm 40 years into this business, and I've certainly seen, significant steps forward. Are they enough steps? No, but it's very different now for somebody to, make it through post-secondary education and start competing. There are some legislative requirements for employers to adhere to that are going to help that individual be interviewed fairly and hired and supported. And there's certainly some government supports through ODSP and other departments that will provide job coaches or equipment or, to enhance their employability. But at the end of the day, the better job we do at this, the better community we have, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone deserves to draw a paycheck at the end of 2 weeks, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bob, I'm curious to get your perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion as a whole. The progress we've made, and how far you think we still need to go.
Oh my God. Well, sadly, we still have a long way to go. There's some tremendous companies and some tremendous, CEOs and CFOs and foremen and forewomen that this is not even a question anymore. But there's, Kevin, look, as better than most, there are still some mountains to climb, and you're a young person, so I hope when you're sitting at my number of birthday candles that we're having a different conversation. But there's still significant steps that we need to take, and Canada's the greatest country on the planet. I'll have that discussion with anybody. I think Canada has a spirit, a natural spirit that's sometimes hard to see, but a natural spirit of inclusion and wanting to do better and identifying when we don't do well and wanting to improve on that. I think that's part of our DNA as a country. So we have to be optimistic, and we have to be willing as individual citizens to do what we can when we have the opportunity, whether it's to write a reference letter for someone who's asked us that may require some job adaptation or some job support to gain a position. But whatever we can do, if we own a company, I think that's got to be part of our corporate plan to hire somebody who's needing a broader sense of acceptance or a broader birth to make it into the work world. And that's true of everyone. That first job, that first opportunity is the key. And whether that's a government supported position or a part-time position or a volunteer position, getting that first, once you get that first nugget to build on, the momentum kind of naturally presents itself. So I just hope we do better, Kevin, and I hope that our governments, provincial, federal, and regional, I hope they continue to make it a priority to fund places like the Unemployed Help Center and to fund, programs like ODSP and to fund, employer incentives to hire people that might be disadvantaged from a work perspective. I hope that remains a priority. And I know, we've got some challenges ahead relative to healthcare and an aging population. But you know what, Kevin? it's tough to drive around Windsor right now and not see help wanted signs. That's great. You know, I think employers now might be forced out of their comfort zone to interview folks that might at first blush not seem to be able to do a particular job or be qualified for a particular job. And I read a great quote the other day where, and I forget the name of the company, but it was a Fortune 500 company, and they have literally made it part of their HR program now, not to hire based on qualification, but to hire based on attitude. So in other words, if you've got a mid-level position that's open in this particular company and somebody applies and the first thing on their resume is, I don't know the first thing about XYZ, but I am incredibly willing to learn and I've got an aptitude for A, B, C, and D. I'm yours to mold. That's becoming a catch point for employers now. If somebody's willing to learn and has a good work history, doesn't matter if you don't have the degree or the experience, because of the need of the workforce right now, or the need for more people to enter the workforce, I think that creates some natural opportunities.
It certainly does. And, Bob, I'm curious to also ask you, the last 2.5 years have been challenging for all of us. And I think because of the coronavirus, it's really provided us an opportunity to have a more broader perspective on what really is important in life. So what do you take sort of a 360-degree view of society? What do you see today, both positive, negative, and sort of what gives you the most hope for the future?
Well, to be honest, Kevin, what gives me the most hope for the future is this conversation. You as an individual, a young person who you look at the world, you look at your place in it, and you refuse to let anyone else define your place in this world. You're carving out an incredible spot for yourself. Your skills are growing, your reputation's growing, your viewership is growing, your confidence is growing. So you and literally thousands of other young people who have survived this pandemic, who have survived, incredible political upheaval below the U.S. border and to some degree in our own country. And as a foster parent, I've got to tell you, we've had 40 years of young people coming through our front door. Some stay for a month, some stay for 12 years, and a lot of them still call us mom and dad. Young people are our only hope. And the good news is, I see a resilience and a pliability or a flexibility that didn't exist in my generation. We had a very concrete view of what we needed to do. You do good in high school, you go to college or university, you get a job and you figure it out. Your generation is much more entrepreneurial. You're much more confident in being able to develop your passion. Not that we weren't allowed to have passions when I was, we had guidance counselors. and their job was to remind us that we sucked at math and that we couldn't pursue this, that, or the other because of A, B, C, and D. And young people today, thank God, are emboldened to truly, pay the bills. That's cool, but don't give up on a dream. Have a dream. Do something every day to build your bridge towards your dream. Don't be dissuaded, and there's nothing stopping you. And again, as you know, Kevin, I dabble in stand-up comedy, and I have for years and years. And way back in the day, there was a path to that. You went to a comedy club, you did open mic nights. Maybe the comedy club, Yucks back in the day, liked you. They would hire you. You would work your way up in that chain, and that was the path to comedy. Now, and in terms of getting a sitcom or blowing up in terms of a big comedy career, that was a move to New York or a move to Toronto or a move to LA. Now, because of this medium, because of the internet and YouTube and so on, if you are passionate and talented and committed, you know, you can expand the path to that dream. And I think that's true of almost anything now. I think if your passion is to be a writer or a content creator or a teacher or a musician, there's just so many different ways now to alert people of your presence and of your value and of your gift. And so young people today, I think, have that natural advantage, the confidence that youngish people have in terms of IT and technology and this medium. I think you know, I don't want to be young again, but I certainly wish we had more elements of that when I was younger, more paths, more ways through the forest to get where you wanted to be.
Well, experience is your greatest teacher, isn't it?
Sadly, yes, that is true. It has been my my tutor right up until including today. So yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'm also wondering your thoughts, Bob. You and your wife, Cindy, as you mentioned before, have spent 40 years as a foster family for a deserving kid. So tell me, anyone that's watching this, about the power of opening yourself up to active service and what fostering has done to your life to enrich it. I'm curious.
Oh my God. How many hours do we have, Kevin? It has been truly, I can't talk about it without getting emotional, but it has been an odyssey. It's been the best thing we have done as a family collectively. Certainly the best thing I've ever done as a person is to, you know, I think you used the word, you know, allow these young folks in our home. It has been a privilege. We've gotten to meet some real heroic people who have survived much, figured out a way to adapt to the trauma that they had experienced, use it to their advantage, and come through a very difficult system, and become just, you know, lovely people. So, and I'm always in awe of people that survive despite some harrowing odds. I have all day to listen to you know, people's stories, because whether it's in my professional life, people that have survived horrific accidents and physical injuries and emotional injuries, those people are heroic to me. So are an 18-year-old who has, you know, survived difficult family circumstances, multiple foster placements, multiple moves, and yet come through with hope in their heart, optimism, a passion about something. That's remarkable to me, and it's heroic. So what I've gained from it really is perspective. You know, my worst day, I've had some horrible days, but my worst days always had some light at the end of the tunnel that I didn't have to create. A lot of the kids that we've had to create their own light. So not a great answer to a tough question, but it's very much a selfish act to be a foster parent. It's an incredibly selfish act to surround yourself with young people that don't want to quit.
Well, creating an inclusive environment, you know, Bob, we mutually share the desire to sort of bridge the gap of division and create a bigger bridge of unity. So I want to thank you for your work in that regard, my friend. And my final question for you today, Bob, has to do with, you know, I'm very big personally, Bob, about celebrating the wins in life and really including in the joy of life, celebrating the biggest and smallest of wins. So my final question for you has to do with, how do you celebrate life, and how do you think you want your personal and professional legacy to be defined?
Wow. Actually, an easy question. So we're grandparents. So that has been by several million miles the greatest win is raising two biological kids and a whole bunch of other kids, and having a happy, healthy, joyous little grandchild kind of be in our family. That's a win that transcends, just about anything else that I can think of. The joy in our life, Kevin, in our family is the collective win. I think, out of the group of a couple of hundred kids that we've had, and all of my professional colleagues and our friends and family, when somebody does well, that's something that we all take joy in. And I think that's a bit of a lost art. Even when a competitor does well, I think that's a joy that we should all have, and that I do have. I absolutely hate the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think they're a horrible organization. Yet when they won, I found joy in their win because, Kadri is on their team, former Leaf. I like the Leafs. So I took some joy in their win, even though they're my arch enemy as a hockey team. And I think that should be our goal as a society. I'm a massive Bruce Springsteen fan. And one of my favorite quotes that he said is, unless we all win, nobody wins. And there's truth in that, that if people get left behind economically or socially or in any way, it diminishes us, all of us. And I think, to finish that point, that's why I love the idea of Canada. I think our view, our social programming, our collective experience is trying to pull us toward a point where if Newfoundland's having a bad time, the people in BC feel equally bad about it as do the people in Newfoundland. And I think by and large, Canadians are built that way. And we love to see each other win. My legacy, I hope, is that, at some point, if people talk about our family, is that they'll speak of us in those terms, that, boy, the LaBrecques weren't happy unless everybody was happy. And I think that's a simple answer to a complex question, but that's what I got.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can all, I always say, if you pay it forward, the rewards you get personally will multiply. Would you agree with that?
No argument here, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bob, finally, tell me if people want to get connected with Align Case Management, or you personally, what's the best way they can do that?
Just go on the website, aligncasemanagement.com, and my contact details are on there, and it's all good.
Fantastic. Well, Bob, as you know, we usually have some mutual interest in terms of volunteering and some other community endeavors around the city of Windsor and the county of Essex. It's always great to see you, buddy, and I was looking forward to engaging in conversation with you. I want to thank you for the good work that you do to make our community a better place, and for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
God bless, Kevin. Keep up the good work. I can't wait to see where your path leads.